Interesting thing going forward in history is because of the new planning, this is the second year that we've picked this vineyard. So, and I think really replanting a vineyard there, I've wondered in my mind, how are the wines going to taste? How are they going to be over a period of time?
What it's been.
Is it going to be what it's been?
Yeah.
And the upper vineyard right now, is it going to be what it's been? And I think that all we can do, or mom and dad have done, is really tried to continue to focus on the small piece of property that they have and doing the best that they can here. So much of the characteristic of a wine is really established in the vineyard. I think Heidi is incredible and Gary's been incredible. We've had great winemakers over the years, but we're also blessed with an incredible hillside. I think you can actually taste the wine and it does have certain characteristics that are different than many of the other great wines in the Napa Valley.
It's real close to a week for it to complete its fermentation. And we do punching down by hand. We have sort of a big paddle, a wooden paddle, that we submerge the floating skins underneath the juice to really get full extraction. And it'll stay in barrels really the rest of its life. The wine will typically stay and age in wood for up to 2 years. We try to make the very finest wines possible.
The winery, by American standards, was a near success from day one, and by American standards I mean that it basically contributed to my wallet and my ego. We were, I think to my knowledge, probably the highest price red wine coming out of the Napa Valley from day one, and we enjoyed accolades from the press, etc., etc. But the winery truly at that point was not living up to its destiny. Come 1986 and 1987, there were some travails for me financially and personally, and during that period of time I had what I considered were some pretty significant setbacks, and probably my drinking became problematical, and I had to deal with some other personal issues, and at that time the winery came and went through a very profound transformation. After my drinking career stopped, which has now been nearly 13 years, I realized that there was a greater good that this little piece of land could stand for. We decided at first to probably become more active in charities and try and raise more capital for various causes, and the causes that really touched our hearts were basically causes around children. And our wines, because of the very small quantity and the perceived quality of our product, established extraordinary prices at both commercial and charity auctions. In about 1991, I was approached at the Napa Valley Wine Auction by a woman who asked me, would you and your wife come down and be honorary chair people at our first auction? I said, yeah, we'd be honored to, but I had a condition, and she's a very fast-thinking woman. She immediately asked me, she informed me rather, she said, I know what your condition is. And I said, well, what do you think it is? And she said, well, you want us to pay your expenses. And I said, that's not it. I said, what I'd like to do is I'd like to visit the children in the hospital in Birmingham, Alabama, that are dealing with these life-threatening or life-altering diseases. We went to see 4 children, and on the way into a conference room where the families were waiting for us, I was stopped by a woman by the name of Carolyn Frazier. She said, well, I just want to thank you so much for making it possible for my son Anthony to spend a week in Disney World. And I looked into the conference room, and there was Carolyn's son, Anthony, sitting on Rusty Staub's lap. Well, Anthony weighed about 40 pounds, as I recall, and Rusty weighs 275, and my view to this day is still 2 giant men. I went over and I spent 20 minutes talking to Anthony, and we bonded. I guess that's the only word I know to describe it. And that night at dinner, all I could think of was this young boy, and so I phoned up and found out if I could take Anthony to the Birmingham Zoo the next day, and people got permission, and from the mother and the hospital and the doctor and the administrators, and Sunday morning I showed up at the University Hospital and picked Anthony up, and just he and I went out to the Birmingham Zoo, and I remember the trip out there very distinctly. On the way out, he was asking me about animals like ocelots and lemurs, and I had to think, gosh, what the heck's a lemur? I didn't know what a lemur was. And we got inside the zoo. On the way in, there was a giant peacock there with all of its feathers unfurled, and Anthony and I walked right up to it, and he was holding my hand. He had no father image, and he had a turquoise cap on. He was bald from chemotherapy, and he was telling me all about this peacock. And just as we were standing there, I just happened to look over my shoulder each way, and there was a peacock had come up from one side here and another side there, and I noticed them, and he noticed me noticing them, and he looked up at me and he said, "Well, don't be afraid, Mr. Grace." He said, "They have us surrounded, but we'll get away." So the boy had a wonderful sense of humor. We spent the next 4 hours in the zoo, and Ann joined us for the last hour, and I guess it was one of the most rewarding 4 hours of my life. I was transmitted messages of compassion and kindness and love, and during that 4 hours that sustained me to this day. And at the end of the day, I took Anthony in the little zoo store, and I bought him a stuffed hippopotamus and told him he was my new best friend, which he was, and that I would phone him every Sunday night, which I did for the rest of his life, which was 6 months. During my theoretically successful business career, frankly, I never thought that life had a purpose. I thought you did life. I thought that you had a family, you conducted an equitable business, you had an ability to travel, you educated your youngsters, you had family get-togethers, and you were an asset to your community, but I thought you just kind of like did life. I never thought that you had a purpose in life.
Inspired by Anthony, Dick's interest in helping children was broadened by the family's first visit to Nepal in 1990.
People often ask me why I go back to Nepal so often. I guess there are several reasons, one of them certainly being that Nepal is a fourth world country and the needs are so obvious and so easy to address. But more importantly, there's a spiritual home for me there. I've often said that some of my greatest teachers have been the children of Nepal that I have set out to be of assistance to. Thich Nhat Hanh said a great thing about charity. He said, "Enlightened charity is never looking upon yourself as the helper, nor the object of your charity the helped, because no one is wise enough to know who the helped truly is." And in my case, that is definitely true. For these people who I originally set out to help have become my greatest teachers.
On each trip to Nepal, Dick and Ann host a dinner for the various people that they have met on their journey.
We also had some people from the Buddhist tradition there, and a number of people from various disabled homes and hospices, etc. The people of Sechin Monastery were so touched by the outreach and the compassion shown by all of us in that room that they decided to dedicate a portion of their land towards the construction of the community hospital. You know, we thought we were there just to have a wonderful evening, and out of that evening springs a hospital in Kathmandu for all people, and what a gift that is.